beautiful people, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil, a podcast on psychic protection, spiritual hygiene, and navigating the ebbs and flows of the healing journey as you learn to master both your sovereign and shadow selves. My name is Lauren on Earth, your host, and welcome back to another episode where we're talking about time distortion and Saturn and the Saturnian time matrix. This is a topic I've wanted to address for a while because time has been feeling a little weird lately, a little weird and wonky. I'm not sure if you guys agree or have picked up on this, but one thing I'm noticing, especially because I do spend 6 months out of the year in the States, and I noticed that time moves differently in the States than it does in Mexico. And I've been noticing that my time back in the States has gone by much quicker, even though it's the same number of months. I've been noticing that my days are shorter, they go by much faster. I can't get the same amount of things done while in Mexico. I feel like in Mexico, I'm there longer. The days are much longer. And also, they're much more fulfilling and filled with joy. And you guys know I've talked about the joy suppression that I feel happening in this matrix system in the States. But I know they're manipulating time. I mean, they created this time matrix, right? And being in the States over these past few months, the level of artificial intelligence all around us, the surveillance, the levels of manipulation on all fronts is beyond any other country that I've spent time in so far. So let's talk about it, what's actually going on. And I want to back up a little bit. By now, you guys have probably heard the episodes. I feel like I reference these a lot, but they're kind of important. The episodes on the Book of Enoch, the archons, the fallen angels, the watchers, and that whole story of the original fall from grace. And if not, I highly recommend going back to those episodes before we continue, because this is kind of a continuation of explaining how these fallen angels have so much power in the present moment and how they've locked us into these time grids and structures of illusion and distortion. And so this is going to be a two-part episode where first going to talk about Saturn and the Saturnian time matrix, and then we're going to talk about some of the archonic structures, the black cube and red cube technology that is also meant to bind and limit consciousness. So one of the theories around the fallen angels and the watchers is that all of the planets are essentially embodiments of these fallen angels and are still impacting and influencing us today. Another thing mentioned in the Book of Enoch is around forbidden knowledge that the watchers gave humanity, and one of those being astrology. Now, my belief is that astrology is both the trap and the map to liberation. So when we look at the zodiac and the different ages we enter into that all last around 2,000 years, we are moving through the zodiac, or this blueprint that has been laid out by the fallen angels. And the way through it, the way through this trap, is to move through the ages of the zodiac on a collective scale. And then we do the same within our own personal birth chart. So when I hear this belief that says the fallen angels are the planets, it's kind of like this deep soul knowing and soul truth that that is correct. And in Gnostic texts, in the Apocryphon of John, the archons in that text are said to dwell in planetary spheres, and that the soul passes through their realms after death. So it's kind of, that theory in those texts. And then in many past civilizations, including the Anunnaki-led Mesopotamia and Greek culture, before more modern astronomy, the planets were seen as divine or semi-divine beings. And we know when they say divine beings or gods with a little g, what they really meant are fallen angels, because they called themselves gods, right? And divine beings as well. So in Mesopotamia, each of the planets was a god. In Greek and Roman times, they kept this same view, just changed their names. Early Christians also saw the planets with having personal powers, so not too far off in my theory. And if they're not exactly the embodiment of these demonic entities, they are connected to them in some way. And obviously, Saturn is a planet, so that's why I kind of wanted to give this background. So let's get into a little bit of a background on Saturn. So in Roman mythology, Saturn was an agricultural god associated with sowing seeds and harvest and time and abundance. And then he was later linked to wealth and liberation. What I see with Saturn, I see the light and the dark. I see both sides of it, but that he's kind of like this outer prison warden, the furthest visible planet to the naked eye, and kind of marks the limit of the organic universe and keeps souls cycling into matter. Yes, he's associated with time and restriction and also deliberate soul control. And like I said, I see both sides. I see how Saturn teaches us to transform through limitation. It serves us, right? But there are parts of it that also don't. And going back to the planet theory for a minute, where each planet can be seen as a different station of control. So a soul descends into incarnation and it picks up programs from each planet. When it tries to ascend, it must break those controls. So the moon, representing illusion, emotional manipulation. Mercury, representing confusion, false knowledge, trickster data. Venus is desire and attachment and inverted love. The sun, false light and ego worship. Mars, conflict and aggression. Jupiter, hierarchy. Saturn, time, limitation, fear of death. Neptune, distortion, glamour, false transcendence. Uranus, rebellion without wisdom. And Pluto, domination, possession, and power through destruction. So, as you guys also know, I don't believe that these angels truly fell from grace. One did, one fallen being, and that was Sophia, who then created an inverted being that then created all of this. So the fallen angels, the watchers, the archons are all creation of the creation made outside of divine order. They were never true angels. And if you read the book of Enoch, he talks about how he saw these heavens and the seven heavens that act like this astral system. And there are seven traps. That's what they are. And the soul is learning lessons of limitation and expansion from these planets. And each time the planet tries to keep it bound by guilt, desire, fear, or false enlightenment, so it reincarnates rather than escaping. From one perspective, it's lessons that lead to liberation. And I agree it helps us evolve, absolutely. But from another perspective, they are control programs and systems. And some of it is very dark. So Saturn is an important one because it's so much more than a planet. It's also an entire cult. So let's talk about that. In Greek mythology, Saturn was the god Cronus, the Titan who ruled during the Golden Age before being overthrown by his son Zeus, who was also Jupiter. Kronos was a god of time and cycles and also of limitation and endings, and that rings true still today. So his role was to keep us, or is to keep us in these loops, but also to test the soul with fear of limitation, death, scarcity, and responsibility. If the soul stays unconscious, the loop continues. And we know our system for keeping time is distorted. We can all feel it. It doesn't feel right. It's not connected to the natural rhythms. And um, yeah, that's a problem because no matter how much we try to align ourselves to the natural rhythms, we're constantly being pulled out of it because of these greater systems. So we see how, and again, I'm not saying Saturn is dark and negative or anything like that. It's just that there's obviously a game that we're playing, right? And this is part of the game. But at the same time, it is a huge inverted system, matrix, and grid that controls time, and not in a way that is fully beneficial to us, that has been built into the lower material world. And recently, they've been doing the absolute most to tighten those restrictions and limitations. I can feel them working on this structure. And they're definitely doing ritual work to distort time, to speed up time, and the perception of time even more. Now, as you guys know, a matrix or grid doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It's just a structure placed over our world that allows them to have a bit more control. To me, it's not a good thing because we did not consent to this and they're not being transparent about it. I do not believe that this level of control over us is beneficial. There's a difference between a more neutral standpoint with Saturn testing us and helping us to break out a limitation versus what more is going on right now. Does that make sense? So I do agree that linear time helps us make sense of our reality and compartmentalize past, present, and future. But also, that's what I know. So, you know, I'm not saying that Saturn is inherently bad. I'm just saying that he is responsible for a lot of the limitations and upholding those limitations that we're experiencing. So, the Saturnian cults, and this is connected to the occults, the Freemasons, the Luciferian worship, the solar worship, is essentially a network of power structures or belief systems that embody these distorted or inverted Saturnian traits: control over freedom, obsession with time, separation from the organic flow of source. And symbolically, this group system represents or reflects the human struggle between structure and liberation. So Saturn's shadow expresses as restriction and kind of like a spiritual amnesia, where higher aspects challenge consciousness to transcend those boundaries of illusion. The Saturnian cult is an ancient priesthood of control. Saturn, the lord of time and karma, ruling boundaries of the material world, the gatekeeper who binds spirit into matter. This is the inverted Saturnian current, where it has forgotten its purpose as an initiator and instead acts kind of like a warden of this matrix. Or maybe it was never meant to be an initiator at all, because it is a fallen angelic being that was always seeking control. So in this current, time becomes a prison, cycles loop endlessly, consciousness gets trapped in karma. And maybe this is what they are intentionally doing. And then the black cube, which we'll get into next episode, which is linked to Saturnian worship, kind of embodies this geometry of containment where the energy folds in on itself. And at its core, this Saturnian force is the frequency of compression. It slows vibration, it turns freedom into structure and structure into law. And it's currently in a fallen state. It breeds fear, suppression of the feminine, addiction to control. And this may be why some of you had such a hard time with control. It's not you, it's the system. And the cult of Saturn thrives where obedience replaces true wisdom and time replaces eternal life. So The Saturnian time matrix is the structure that keeps us bound in linear time and limitation and karmic law. And that's what I mean when I say it's not easy to escape the matrix entirely, because we are bound in ways we don't even realize. And we're all affected by this. We can't escape linear time or stop what they're doing to distort it further on our own. I personally have been working on this myself lately. Obviously, I cannot escape it because I still need to follow the clock and the calendar that everyone else follows. I can't go making up my own and then expect others to understand that, because that would be very confusing. You guys know the Gregorian calendar is another layer of this inversion and an attempt to control and manipulate time. When we're out of alignment with our natural rhythm, it's like we're out of alignment with so much. So I've been working to subtly and slowly pull as much of my energy out of this matrix as possible. And it's a lot harder to do in the US. I've been doing a lot of clearing of these insanely deep layers, but it is a lot easier to do in Mexico. But I have noticed differences in how I do feel a bit more free, but it is hard. It's a lot of work. And it's a continuous energetic practice that I'm working to expand my time perception and to help my consciousness remember its eternal nature beyond Saturn's limitations. And so hopefully you guys just hearing this right now, it's bringing the awareness, things are starting to click, and you can start to set those same intentions for yourself, because you are not a property of time. You are not a child of Chronos. Saturn does not own you. You are eternal, fluid, infinite, divine. Earth, okay, maybe a test, a trap, a classroom, but you are always more than its structure. And if you're involved in a matrix that is still serving you, where it's testing that limitation, then great. But if there are matrices that are trying to trap you in a way that is depleting, and where you've already worked through the lessons that it's showing you, you do not have to consent. And just remembering that Saturn, or any layer of this parasitic system, is not the keeper of you. And you can at least recognize and believe that, and that energy will already start to shift. It's already going to start pulling you out of the system. So Saturn, cosmic timekeeper, primary architect of consciousness imprisonment. And it's also part of the archonic prison, this massive multidimensional matrix using Saturn's electromagnetic influence and lunar cycles to keep human consciousness in these more harvestable states. And for those who need science, even though the science we are shown is often fabricated science to fit the mold of the story they want to tell, NASA has documented this. You guys know how I feel about NASA, but they've studied this Saturn's hexagonal polar storm, which is basically this geometric field and formation that, according to them, shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. Yet it maintains this perfect hexagonal symmetry across a 15,000-mile radius. I also am constantly clearing hexagons in sessions as well. Like the other day, there were layers of it, of this inverted geometry in someone that looked like honeycomb. And the hexagonal structure, it does, as with everything, resonate at a specific frequency, but it affects human brainwave patterns and consciousness states. And this is scientifically proven. You can look into it. So now there's also something called the Saturn-Moon matrix. And it's all connected, right? But lunar cycles influence collective emotional tides, shaping how energy is generated and released. And the moon functions as Saturn's primary consciousness device, creating predictable emotional cycles that allow for more harvesting, basically. So full moon periods generate heightened emotional intensity that create more optimal conditions for loosh harvesting. And then new moon phases create kind of like this emotional void state that enables programming and redirection of energy. The moon also represents reflection, illusion, and the subconscious. So it's just another layer that kind of keeps us in these emotional loops and pulls on and plays off our emotion. And this leads into the moon being an artificial construct placed by them, but that was already talked about in a past episode. We're just continuing to put all the pieces together. So I hope this was helpful. If you do feel a call to work with me on the removal of these matrices from your own system, I'm always here. Maybe this will be a clearing series or something if enough of you are interested in time manipulation, timeline manipulation. But I do have system override right now, and that's a really great place to start because this is advanced and there's a time and place for it. So doing something like system override to really get you in the flow with everything, and then maybe we can get a small group together to work through some of these more advanced things because I really would love to teach it. So the next episode will be going deeper into some of these structures, the more advanced types of technology, the black cube, red cube, and I'll see you guys there. For now, you can find me at laurenonearth.com, Lauren on Earth on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.